This mysterious cave, shrouded in secrecy and wild speculations, lured three men into its depths, without the right preparation. What began as mere curiosity quickly spiraled into a nightmare they could never have imagined. This is the tragic tale of William Coughlin. William Coughlin, a 27-year-old environmentalist from Oak Forest, Illinois, had an undeniable love for the outdoors. His mother, Marge, often spoke of his deep affection for wildlife. Working with the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, William's job reflected his passion for protecting nature. When not working, he roamed the woods and waterways with friends, always searching for his next adventure. Caving, however, was a new obsession for William, one introduced by a friend. Despite lacking proper experience and equipment, William and his friends successfully navigated their first cave, which only boosted their confidence to tackle more difficult ones. Having never heard of caving accidents, they naively believed nothing bad could happen to them. Determined to find a cave that would challenge them, William's friend James suggested they head to Cave City in Kentucky. Known for its surface attractions and miles of underground caverns, it promised the adventure they craved. One cave, in particular, caught their attention: Buzzards' Roost Cave. According to the brochure, it was known for its deep drops and narrow passages, clearly not meant for beginners. For William, who usually stayed close to home, this trip was a massive step. It would be their first organized caving adventure, and he was eager for the thrill. The danger only added to the appeal, making the idea of conquering this cave irresistible. On Friday, May 28, 1993, William, James, and Kevin traveled from Illinois to Cave City, arriving just in time for Memorial Day weekend. While crowds swarmed the surface attractions, the trio had their eyes set on the caves below. They learned of two tours: the Historic Tour and the Wild Cave Tour. The Historic Tour was a safer, guided walkthrough, while the Wild Cave Tour demanded crawling, twisting, and squeezing through undeveloped passages. They opted for the Historic Tour first. Before they began, they signed a waiver. One document passed between them, warning of the cave's dangers and releasing the operators from any responsibility. Trusting the guide and the operators, they paid little attention to the risks. William and James were eager to enter the cave despite these warnings, though Kevin decided to stay above ground, preferring to explore other local attractions. After completing the Historic Tour with guide Dave Harden, they immediately jumped into the more dangerous Wild Cave Tour offered that afternoon. Along with 4 others, they paid for this daring adventure. Before they started, the guide made them sign another release form identical to the first one. He handed them 2 handheld flashlights and explained they were to follow closely behind him, navigating the cave just as the person ahead of them did. He emphasized the importance of sticking together, showing them the tight tunnels they'd be crawling through, almost warning them away from the tour. But William and James, brimming with confidence, weren't backing down. They had been waiting for this adventure for months and were ready. Despite their excitement, they were surprised by the lack of gear. Seasoned explorers always bring helmets, extra food, water, and at least 3 light sources. Still, they pressed on, driven by the thrill and adrenaline. At the halfway point, they found the cave less difficult than expected. Hungry for more, they hoped the second half would push their limits. Urged by the guide, they descended deeper into the cave. After squeezing through a narrow tunnel, they reached a 30-foot hanging cable ladder with wooden rungs. The guide called out instructions as they descended. However, the next ladder, only 15 to 20 feet, was trickier due to its position over rocky terrain. After the group descended, the guide told them the official tour was over, allowing them to explore nearby passages, but they were running behind schedule. Leaving the group at the bottom, the guide went to make a quick phone call. Meanwhile, William, curious about an earlier passage, decided to climb back up the second ladder to explore. James agreed, hoping they might discover an untouched part of the cave. However, William, already exhausted, found the ladder unsteady. At 6 feet tall and 220 pounds, he struggled to grip the rungs. Frustrated, he decided to wait for the guide, taking a break. James suggested the others look for the guide, who had been gone for quite some time. Eventually, William decided to try the ladder again. But halfway up, panic set in. He lost his grip and plummeted to the cave floor. The fall was devastating. His head struck a sharp rock, leaving a 2-inch gash, and blood began to pour. James, in shock, rushed to his friend's side. Though conscious, William was disoriented, unable to grasp what had just happened. The group panicked as James tried to reassure William, promising they'd get him out. When the guide finally returned, he insisted they'd need to climb back out the way they came. But William, injured and delirious, could barely stand, let alone climb. Time was slipping away, and the group feared William might not survive. This enraged James, who argued with the guide, demanding a cave rescue team. But the guide pushed back, saying they'd have to work together to get William out. James suspected the guide wanted to avoid stirring up panic among the surface tourists. Reluctantly, the group agreed to avoid the ladders and take a marked passage, never meant to be part of their adventure. It had been mapped before, but was extremely narrow. With great effort, they managed to push William through the first obstacle. The real challenge came next. A narrow V-shaped passage, steep and sharp, requiring a belly crawl. William, nervous about getting stuck, squeezed in head first. But halfway through, he froze. Unable to move and pinned horizontally, he cried out for help. The more they pulled, the more trapped he became. William's position compressed his chest, making it harder to breathe. His breaths grew labored, the sound of each one frightening the group. James was horrified. He tried everything, but nothing worked. The guide told James to head to the surface for help, but it was clear they wanted to handle the situation quietly. 3 critical hours passed before rescue teams arrived. By then, it was too late. Despite all efforts, William was stuck too deep. Rescue workers spent 17 agonizing hours trying to save him. Tragically, William was pronounced dead from positional asphyxia. It took another 7 hours to remove his body, finally bringing him out on Monday morning, 3 days after he first entered the cave. In the aftermath, it was revealed that the cave's owner knew of the risks but failed to warn visitors adequately. William's family won damages, a tragic recognition that the waivers were more about persuasion than any real warning of the dangers ahead. If William had survived the harrowing ordeal inside the cave, his life would have undoubtedly taken a drastically different path. Physically, the fall and the subsequent entrapment might have left him with long-term injuries. Perhaps head trauma or internal damage caused by the fall, or even nerve and muscle damage from the compression in the narrow passage. Recovery would have been long and grueling, involving surgeries and rehabilitation, but the psychological toll could have been even greater. William would likely have suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, as the trauma of nearly suffocating in the cave and facing his mortality in such an extreme situation could haunt him for years. The once-spirited adventurer might have found himself grappling with fear, anxiety, and a hesitation to engage in the outdoor activities he once loved. Surviving such a terrifying event could also have shifted William's outlook on life. Having come so close to death, he might have developed a newfound appreciation for life's fragility and the importance of preparation. His environmentalist passion may have deepened, perhaps leading him to use his experience as a cautionary tale to warn others about the dangers of extreme activities without proper safety measures. William could have become an advocate for caving safety regulations, or even helped push for reforms that require tour guides and operators to take greater responsibility for participants' safety. In fact, his voice might have sparked legal changes, encouraging more stringent protocols to protect adventurers like himself from similar tragedies. William's relationships with friends and family would have likely changed as well. His mother, Marge, who had always admired his adventurous spirit, might have struggled with overwhelming relief and worry. While she would have been thankful for his survival, she might have urged him to reconsider his passion for risky endeavors. His friends, too, especially James, would have been affected, possibly feeling a mixture of guilt and gratitude. Their friendship might have strengthened through shared trauma, or it could have fractured under the weight of what they had experienced together. Professionally, William's career as an environmentalist might have taken a more public turn,